gaudy, so gaudy, so gaudy. Gaudy stats, gaudy stats. Good God, that's gaudy. Welcome to Gaudy Stats
with Ben Simmons.
What's on the menu, Benny boy?
Today, I welcome in my friend Dan. He's a great guy, and boy does he know stats. He's locked in with the statistics. Originally from Philadelphia, he's a 76ers fan. And yes, we talk about Ben Simmons, the other Ben Simmons, sorry. Talk about Joel Embiid. We do that at the end of the podcast, but the main part of the podcast is about the Big Dipper, Wilt Chamberlain. The man was a god of gaudy stats. Some might say the god of gaudy stats. Sickening, disgusting, filthy stat lines. Season long per game stat lines. If you saw them in a box score today, you would just be aghast with horror and enjoyment as well. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to this ep. Dan's a great guy. I think we'll do that as a main course, and then a little side on the side. I think I'll do some stuffing, like Thanksgiving style stuffing with gravy on top, and then maybe get some yams too. Real starchy, fill you up, stick to your ribs. What do you guys think of that? Sound good? Okay, let's hit it.
Hello, sir.
Daniel, my friend, how you doing? It's been a while since
I'm doing
we
well,
chatted.
man. I'm excited. It has. I'm excited to talk about this with you too, because I couldn't think of a more willing partner to go down this road with. So.
Indeed.
I know.
It's a long road too. This is a man who he averaged 30 points and 22 rebounds, rounded up about 23 rebounds for his entire career. And that's just gaudy as all hell. If you saw that, and 4 assists. If you just saw that in a box score, like, you're just on ESPN, like currently, and you see like, oh, Boogie Cousins got, scored 30 points and had 23 rebounds, you'd be like, Jesus Christ, and 4 assists. That's a huge line. But the man did it for his entire career.
Yes, it's pretty incredible. And he didn't even average fewer than 20 rebounds a game until he was 33 years old.
Oh, God.
It's
absurd.
Yeah, so the first 11 years of his career, he averaged over 20 rebounds a game. And it's not like he dipped far. He never averaged fewer than 18.2. So
that's crazy.
It's the game was a little different back then, but obviously, and that's a caveat you need to throw out when talking about Wilt Chamberlain's stats, because other than Bill Russell, there was really absolutely no one like him on the court physically in any way.
Mm-hmm.
So, he's playing with a bunch of guys that were like slightly more physically imposing than us. So, that's somewhat unfair to the basketball players of the 60s, but at the same time, he wasn't playing with today's athletes, although I do think Wilt would have succeeded.
How many, I think you would have too. I think it's a really interesting point. Like, people are always like so dismissive of these older guys, Wilt would have been like Dwight Howard or something, or, well, first of all, that's pretty damn good.
Dwight Howard was really good at his team, so.
Yeah, and second of all, I think Wilt was, if you what I've learned about Wilt, and I know there's like documentaries and there's things probably I haven't seen, there's articles I haven't read, and but he had good fundamentals. He had a lot of
you can't average 50 points a game with bad fundamentals.
Yeah, he wasn't like, I love Shaq, but Shaq was just like that's why they call him Shaq Diesel. He's just like a big truck. And he would just physically dominate and just bully and push and just dunk on people. And I'm sure Wilt did. We know Wilt did too. But I feel like Wilt had a little bit more skill to his game.
Yeah, I think a better comparison than Dwight Howard would have been like a Tim Duncan with a bigger attitude, which would have been an absolutely terrifying player. So
yeah, just quiet.
Wilt had the 10-foot bank shot mastered. So
has a what?
He would have had the 10-foot bank shot in his repertoire, and he also would have been angry enough to just go around dunking on people.
Yeah. I mean, he was graceful for how large he was. I mean, let's just look at his measurables. How big was Wilt? I have his
He's
basketball
7'1".
reference. 7'1". Do you have the weight in front of you?
Yeah.
Like 500 pounds?
He clocked in. He's listed at 275.
275.
So I imagine that later in his career he was a bit heavier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he was. I mean, if you look at old pictures of him, he's not thick the way that Shaq was, but he's kind of built like a young Shaq.
Yeah.
Which again, terrifying. So,
yeah. And if he was around in today's game, they always talk about if such and such player were to play back then, or like play, like they always do like time like comparisons. But if he was around in today's game, he would have been a physical freak. I mean, working out constantly. He already worked out a lot.
Oh, yeah.
But like he would be chiseled. He'd be like Dwight Howard, but bigger and like wider. And
Dwight would be 6'9". So
yeah.
Wilt's 4 inches taller than Dwight Howard.
Yeah. He would have been like a bigger Dwight Howard.
People talk about like, oh, if he played back then, he would have done this and this. Like, Wilt actually had those numbers. So, like, to say, oh, if Anthony Davis played in the 1960s, yeah, he would have had Wilt Chamberlain's averages, maybe. And so, Wilt, statistically, and I mean, that's what we're all about here. Statistically, he is far and away the patron saint of gaudy stats when it comes to basketball.
I know. He is the god of gaudy stats.
And you could argue that he's the patron saint of gaudy stats across sports, although there are other athletes, that can make their claims within their own individual sports.
That's true. I think one day I want to do like a Jim Brown kind of retrospective, because he was in kind of a similar. I don't want to get into football right now, but he was kind of similar in his like domination, but he was like physically bigger than a lot of the guys trying to tackle him, and so it's something else to take into consideration.
I really hope there's an archive of Jim Brown's lacrosse college stats. I'd really like to see those. I don't understand lacrosse, but I feel like he probably scored like 11 goals a game. And so
just crushing them.
And I feel like he might have had a bit of a chip on his shoulder just in general.
Yeah. Oh, you think? Yeah. He had a colossal chip on his shoulder. Well, how do you want to do this? Do you want to just get in? You have some things you want to shoot at me, or do you just want to like go down the line, like down his year by year, and kind of just talk about his output? What do you think?
Well, 61-62 deserves its own section. Otherwise, we can just sort of look at some general, because that's statistically probably the greatest season any human being's ever had in anything.
This just to give the listeners an idea really fast. That was the year that he averaged 50 points and 25 rebounds, to be exact, 25.7 and 50.4. And also we should just point out right away that Wilt only 112 of Wilt's games of his career did they count blocks. Right. So in steals, I'm not even sure if they ever counted steals. They might have, but those we were talking a little bit earlier through text, and we think he would have averaged. I mean, we think he probably averaged over 10 blocks a game some years. I mean, just the way, from what I've read and from what I've heard, it just seems like he would just. There were some games where like the other team would have trouble scoring, and he would just be like swatting shot after shot after shot. And they just didn't count that statistic, and it's sad. It makes me depressed, Dan, when I think about all those numbers that are just lost in the annals of history.
Yeah, floating out in the ether. Yeah, I'm from Philadelphia, so Wilt obviously has that special place for me as well as most other Philadelphians. I mean, he's not revered the way that Allen Iverson is, because Allen Iverson was relatable. So, like, we could look at Allen Iverson and go, oh, that guy's only 3 inches taller than I am, and look what he's doing,
Yeah.
Whereas Wilt is, one of those many athletes who are actually walking proof of evolution. He's at this point a different species than the rest of us.
Yeah.
And based on his claims regarding how many women he slept with, it is proof that he, had a better chance to get his genes into the next generation. So, again,
those are gaudy stats as well. That's some gaudy stats right there.
Yeah. We could touch on them for a bit too at some point. I mean, he would have had to average basically 500 women a year for 40 straight years to reach the 20,000 number he talked about. Which, I mean, I don't think 20,000 is a realistic number, but I do think 4 digits is, and even that is astounding.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
I don't know, he only slept with 1,000 women. Like, well, that's still absolutely absurd.
Yeah, but
So-
Will had a big mouth. Will had a big mouth. I mean, it just really fast. Like, I was looking at some videos after we, you kind of, we were talking over text, and you were like, we could just do a whole Wilt show. And then I went online, I was watching some videos, and that man talked a lot of shit. Like, he was basically like threatened by any center. Like, he basically didn't like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He didn't like Shaq. He was friends with Bill Russell, but then they had a falling out. I didn't talk to him for like 20 years. He was for such a guy who was so dominant, he's a little insecure, and he's an interesting character, a really fascinating guy. I mean, I wish HBO would do some like really high budget like documentary on him. Maybe they have, but I really want to learn more about the guy because psychologically, it's a fascinating man.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that he died at a relatively young age. He's been gone for like 17 years now. Because I think that it would having his perspective would have been fun if he were still around. And I think that he was sort of to some extent maligned for the way he accumulated statistics. Because if you look at his stats, you think, well, that guy should have won 17 titles, and he only won 2. So it's it's. And then the counter argument is Bill Russell, who won 11, who obviously doesn't have anywhere near the stats that Wilt did. Bill Russell, talking about comparisons to today's players, I think of Bill Russell as sort of like a better version of your boy Ben Wallace.
Love Ben Wallace.
If he played today, which is still a very good basketball player, but he wouldn't have been
underrated
the dominant
basketball
force.
player. Yeah, Ben Wallace is underrated.
But I think that some people were like, well, he's scoring all these points and he can't get past Russell in the finals, and I think that he always took that personally. And I don't blame him. I mean, that would have rankled me too.
Yeah, and championships. Yeah. I mean, like championships, like rule the conversation. I mean, you got Skip Bayless and talking heads, just flapping away about people who don't have championships. Like LeBron got it for many years. Even Michael got it his first 6 or 7 years. We didn't win a championship, and I feel like back then, and it was the same kind of dialogue. I mean, it's kind of unfortunate because your boy John Stockton, guys like that, you didn't win championships, but were so prolific in terms of what they did, like in terms of winning, but also their stats, which we care the most about. And we will do, this is a little teaser, but we will do a John Stockton only show just about John Stockton. And for that show, I will not be wearing pants.
You don't want to constrict yourself.
Yeah.
I understand that entirely.
Yes.
So just looking at Wilt led the league in scoring his first 6 years in the league, and he never averaged less than 34.7. I wanted to say like 6 of the top 7 scoring seasons of all time are Wilt Chamberlain.
Wow.
5 of the top 6. 5 of the top 6, and he's 1 through 4. And then there's that year Michael averaged 37 points a game, which is insane. That was in 1987, and then Wilt is there again at number 6. So it's absolutely fascinating, just how many points he was able to put in to the basket, and as a terrible free throw shooter too, because his career free throw shooting is 51% and his career field goal percentage is 54%. So
I didn't know that.
The game where he scored 100, I think he made 26 out of 27 free throws. My father has told me about this numerous times, and that's where I get a lot of my Wilt nostalgia from, maybe not nostalgia, but memories from, because my dad was actually alive to see him play, even though it wasn't televised all the time. And he made 26 to 27 free throws in the game that he scored 100, which for him was just so remarkably out of character that it just sort of made that day its own magical thing. And
how many field goals do you have that box score in front of you? I almost want to I'm gonna open up that year on Basketball Reference and see if I can't find the 100-point game and see how many. Okay, he took 63.
It has its own Wikipedia page, that game.
He took 63. It should. It really should. So he's 36 for 63. So that's 57%, which is which is good. It's really good. Yeah, and he was 28 for 32 from the free throw line.
That's what it was. Okay.
Yeah, and he
so remarkably out of character room.
Yeah, I mean it's
only 25 boards.
Yeah, only 25 boards. God, this game log of this year is well, it's gaudy as all hell, and it's raising my heart rate a little bit. I got my Fitbit on, and my heart rate's starting to go up. Oh my goodness!
I'm looking at the box score now too. He took 63 shots. He had a teammate who took 18 in that game, and another teammate who took 12. So that's 30 shots that he didn't even take from another guy, or two other guys. And so the team attempted 115 shots. The other team attempted 118. There's only 48 minutes of a basketball game. So, we're talking 233 shots in 48 minutes.
How many shots did Kobe take in his last game? Remember he had 60 points or something?
He took 50.
So
I think he took like 51 shots and scored 50 points or something.
Yeah, it was just a classic
case of inefficiency.
Yeah, it was just a classic Kobe, which, I want to do a Kobe show too, because I've hated on Kobe a lot, but I think his career
and Kobe have a lot in common.
Yeah, you're right about that. And statistically, his career is interesting, especially when you mirror it with Jordan's, as it's been done. But like in terms of percentages, it really is fascinating. So that's just a little teaser for a future show. But yeah, it's just crazy that he was able to get 100 points. Taking like 10 more shots, roughly 10 more shots than Kobe took. And Kobe got like 60, so it's just, I guess it's the free throws, just the efficiency of the Big Dipper coming through there.
Yeah. We should also point out that this game took place in Hershey, Pennsylvania. For some reason, it did not occur in Philadelphia. And it's one of those things where now there's 300,000 people in Philadelphia between the ages of 60 and 80 who claim they were there. The attendance is the attendance is 4,124. I've met more than 4,000 people who claim to have attended that game. So
that's such a small amount of people. That's such a small amount.
It was a small arena, and for some reason, I'm sure it's in this Wikipedia page, but it wasn't played in Philadelphia. And we should also point out that the final score of that game was 169 to 147.
Wow.
Which is absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they were playing the Knicks. That's like bragging rights. Yeah, it's like bragging rights against the Knicks. If you ever I know you spend a lot of time in New York, and you have a lot of friends from New York. You can just throw that out there. If you ever find yourself in a corner, sports debate wise. Well, Wilt put 100 points on you guys. Just throw that out there, and just randomly, they'll have nothing to say to that.
Yeah, it's about records that'll never be broken. 100 points in a game is way up there.
It's true.
I don't know if it's number one. It might be number one. I mean, it's
yeah.
If you look at what it took Kobe to score 81, I mean how insane of a rate that had to be.
Yeah.
And Wilt did it without 3-pointers, obviously. So, there were no threes at that point. So it's pretty unbelievable.
No,
and it's almost like we've grown up knowing it, so we just sort of like, oh yeah, Wilt scored 100 in a game. But if you actually stop and think about it, it's like one of those things like thinking about the size of the universe. Your head starts to hurt, and then you just have to stop.
Yeah, cosmically, it just doesn't seem possible, especially when you watch. Like I was talking about Boogie Cousins earlier, and maybe if he was around back then, he would put up these kind of gaudy numbers. I'm sure he would. Not 100, but he would put up huge numbers. But like the relatively the big stat lines now, like when I'm on Instagram and I'm flipping through and you have all these graphics like, James Harden had 17 assists and 26 points and 8 rebounds. I'm like, oh my God, that's gaudy. But like just 100 points. 100 points.
Yeah.
It's like the final score of an NBA game. And it's just
teams frequently don't break 100.
Yeah. So it's absurd. But like this is a man that we were talking about it through text. The amount of minutes this guy played. where it was crazy. Like he routinely,
Yeah,
I
if you
mean,
look
he
at the
averaged no less than like 43 minutes a game for his career or something.
his career average is 45.8 minutes a game, which is absolutely absurd. His lowest total was his age 36 season, where he averaged 40.2 minutes a game, played in every game that season. He also shot 72.7% from the field that year, just for good measure. Averaged 18.6 rebounds and 13.2 points. He scored 13 points a game by only taking 7 field goal attempts a game.
Yeah,
So,
and that one year
and again, this is without 3-pointers.
Yeah, think if he was like a stretch 5 in today's NBA, that'd be hilarious. Like, just talk about the wrong utilization of his talent. But I mean, who knows? That could have just made him into like like an even better player if he had that kind of range. But there was that one.
I think Wilt, he would have figured out how to shoot threes because it would have added to his stats. That would have been a mission of Wilt's.
Yeah. I think you're right. But there's this one year in particular that just popped out at me because I do like across the board production, and again, we don't have the blocks and the steals, which is so sad. But 1967-68. I think that might have been a year where like he heard somebody was like, "Oh, Wilt doesn't pass," something like that. So he started dishing the rock. All right, he averaged 24.3 points, 8.6 assists, and 23.8 rebounds, all while shooting 59.5% from the field, and he only shot 38% from the free throw line. Like, the man almost averaged a triple-double with 24 points and 23 rebounds a game, 8.6 assists. Like, that's just, I mean, think about how many games he must have had where he had like 30 points, 30 rebounds, like 15 assists or something like that. It's just, oh, God. I can't get enough.
I think he just decided he was going to lead the league in assists one year, and then he did.
Yeah.
And so, and while we're on the subject of his absurd 100-point game, when we just sort of got off it, do you know off the top of your head what he also has a record for rebounds in a game? Do you know what that record is?
I'm just gonna throw it out. 68.
That's a little high. It's 55.
Oh, okay. I was gonna go
55.
I was gonna say 45, but then I was like, I'm just gonna go up another level. So I just went.
Yeah. So he averaged a little more than a rebound per minute in that game.
Wow.
And so for the entire game. Yeah.
That is.
I remember my dad telling me he held the record and like asking me as a kid what I thought it was, and I was thinking like Dennis Rodman, where he'd have like 17 rebounds in a game, and that would be remarkable. And I was like, 20? He's like, no, that's not enough.
Dennis Rodman, that'd be a fun one to get into. Okay, that's for the future. I'll probably do a.
Speaking of human beings who deserve their own fascinating case study.
Yeah, because the amount of the rebounding rate that man had was just absurd. Like, I think, but you know, looking at his early career, Rodman, I don't think he was out to get rebounds as much. In like one year, it just like clicked, and he's like, I'm gonna be the rebound guy, and I'm gonna play defense and get tons of rebounds, and it's just from that point on, it was absurd. I don't want to veer off too far, so let's go back to Wilt and let's look at the year again. Let's go back to the 50-point, 25 rebound year where he got 100 points. I'm looking at his game log here. Like for instance, his first 4 games, he scored 48 points, 57 points, 53 points, and 55 points. Like, that's his first 4 games of the season. Like, imagine today's game, like, the media and everything. What would happen, like, if a player scored that many points in, like, 4 games in a row? Like, remember when James Harden, when he first got traded to Houston, he had 2 back-to-back 40-point games? And everyone was like, oh, and, like, social media was just going crazy. Like, just, what do you think it would be like now if Wilt was putting up these numbers in today's game?
Oh, I think that there'd be various people who would just be waiting for his team to not win a championship so they could eviscerate him for it instead of appreciating what he's doing. I just looked at the single game leaders for points all time. There have been 11 times where a player has scored 70 or more points. Do you want to guess how many of them are Wilt Chamberlain?
7?
It's 6.
Oh.
Nobody else has done it more than once. Wilt did it 6 times. And then if we expand that to the top 20 all time, to games of 65 points or more, it has happened 23 times, okay? And Wilt is, do you want to guess how many of those Wilt has scored 65 points or more?
23 times. Okay. I'm going to say 15.
It's exactly 15.
Oh, got it. Got lucky with that one.
So good for you. Good job for you. The only player who appears on this list twice of scoring 65 points or more is Kobe Bryant, and Wilt did it 15 times. So
Kobe.
The two of them certainly do have something in common. Jordan did it once. David Robinson's on there with 71.
They do.
The great and underappreciated David Thompson is on there.
Oh, you're so right about that. You know, have you ever played the video game NBA Street 2, Volume 2?
I have not.
Okay, that was,
I've seen it played and I'm aware of it, but it's not something I ever got into.
So I got into that when I was a youngster, and I gotta tell you, that really opened my eyes to a lot of these historical players, like David Thompson. Like they had all these they had Jerry West, they had David Thompson, they had Pistol Pete, and that's another guy who
Maravich is on the list too.
Stats, the gaudiness, and the just the pure scorer, and the array of shots he had, the flip shots.
Yeah,
oh goodness.
He probably would have averaged 10 or 15 points more a game if the three-point line had existed.
Yeah. And I was in New Orleans with Osborne, Tyler, and some people you know, and we were at this hat shop, and Tyler found this hat. It said like New Orleans Jazz on it, and he's like, Simmons, you should probably get this. So, like, you know, the sucker I am, I immediately was like, yes, I must have this hat, and I got it, and I was like talking to the cashier, and she was this older lady, and she was like talking about how she used to, her and her husband used to watch Pistol Pete play in New Orleans, and how, she was said the exact same thing you said. Like if they had 3-pointers then, he would have averaged like 10 more points a game, easy. Like, because he would just routinely pull up from deep, like on fast breaks,
right.
like Steph Curry style.
Yeah, and it just for the hell of it, there was no bonus incentive to do so, just because he could.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's,
the floppy-haired assassin.
It's like a young Ben Simmons. It's like a young Ben Simmons eating that 8th slice of pizza just to prove that he could do it. You know.
Yeah,
that 8th slice.
Dan, you know me too well. You just know. I mean, that's you know, we haven't even known each other really that long, relatively, but that's the kind of stuff I would do. Like I remember once I was hanging out with some friends, my stepbrother and some other people, and some guy was like, I was eating some White Castle, and he's like, you can't eat all those White Castle burgers, and then like everybody left the room.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, everybody left the room, and like somebody went to the bathroom, and like I was all alone like with these burgers, and like the guy like left the house, he wasn't even there anymore, and I started eating, and I felt, you know, it's like one of those times where you're drunk late at night and you just feel invincible, like you could just eat forever, like you can never stop, you know. And I just like went at it, you know. I felt horrible the next day, obviously, but man, you got your finger on the pulse of me, Dan, whatever that means, but you really do.
Well, I mean, you know, I am very good friends with some people you're very good friends with, and I've heard some stories about things that used to occur, ungodly things.
Well, nothing rivals our mutual friend, Big Gordo.
Yes, I've seen some of that firsthand.
Yeah, that man is a beast, bestial, and he will. I will never challenge him to an eating contest because he gets that look in his eye. This is a large man, by the way, very tall, not girth, height.
He's getting thicker, though. I don't know how recently it is that you've seen him, but I saw him about a year ago.
He's still looking pretty svelte to me. I mean, he looks like he.
Oh, no, I wouldn't call the man fat. He's just finally filling out his frame because he's 6'8", and now he's not. He hasn't turned into his father. But
he looked like he could still back me down in the post and serve up a facial right in my grill. But anyways, we're getting a little off track. That's part of this podcast. We're going to get off track. We're going to go on tangents. So, dear listener, you're gonna have to live with it for now, and forever, actually, because it's never going to change. But okay. So we were just talking about Wilt's 61 to 62 season. All right. And I brought up the season where he had 8.6 assists. And I think I jumped. I said like that was the year he decided to get a lot of assists. But the year before that, in 66, 67, he averaged 7.8.
Which is the year. Yeah, that was the year he won his first championship. While shooting 68% from the field, just for the hell of it, and
that's unreal.
44% from the free throw line. He got 24 points better from the field than he did from the free throw line.
And you know what I just noticed? This is weird. Like, okay, so the year 61, 62, the year we just talked about, with the year he scored 100 points, he shot his best, I think, ever from the free throw line. And he took
61%.
Yeah, and he made more free throws, I think, by a good amount than he does like the rest of his career. Like he was 10 for 17 roughly from the free throw line. That was his average from the free throw line, 10 of 17 for 61%. Right. And it's interesting that was because like it looks like the closest he got to that the rest of his career is the next year when he was 8.3 free throws of 13.9 attempts, and he might have gotten some rondoitis after that, and just not wanting to shoot free throws and kind of dodging, trying to like not get fouled. So I guess it was kind of impossible. He probably endured a similar thing as Shaq, getting fouled a lot and having to go to the line a lot. But
yeah, I think so. I mean, he led the league in free throws attempted 9 times in his career.
Yeah. So that satisfies that then. But I'm just wondering if psychologically maybe that ever crept into his mind that he wasn't a good free throw shooter, and also like I would love to just one day just try to figure out like why are big men so bad at shooting free throws.
I don't know, and I mean I've never understood it. I mean, if you or I were to take a volleyball and attempt to shoot it into a volleyball-sized hoop, it would be more difficult than a basketball. So
I never thought about it that way.
Maybe that has something to do with it. But at the same time, there are big men who are good free throw shooters. So that theory doesn't entirely hold water.
Yeah, like Dirk Nowitzki.
Sure, Dirk's 7 feet tall. He's a great free throw shooter.
Yao Ming, who deserves his own show as well because he's underrated. Sadly, he was made in a lab, and his feet couldn't contain his gigantic frame. But Yao Ming is another guy I want to get into at one point. But he was a great shooter. He was a tall guy. Manute Bol, I think, was an awful free throw shooter. But like there's other oafish large men, extremely tall men who could shoot decently. Like Rick Smits. I mean, I think he was a pretty good free throw shooter.
I mean, Kareem was a 72% career shooter. So, that's – and you talk about a guy who attempted a ton of free throws and made some very, very, very high-pressure ones in his day, too.
Oh, man. Did he ever? I mean, I that's kind of past my time – or before my time, sorry, Kareem. But he's a player that really fascinates me. And actually, to tie him in with Wilt, I saw this interview on YouTube, and the interviewer asked Wilt about Kareem's skyhook. And he's like, why did you never do a skyhook? And Wilt was just like, well, I just dunked on people. and the audience just started laughing and all these different things. But like, I mean, that's curious. I always thought that he had like the older players had the hook shot used to be like a fundamental thing that you were taught. And a lot of the older centers, had that shot. But from his reaction, it sounded like he didn't even have that hook shot. Maybe he had like a little half hook, but I've always wondered.
I don't think he needed it.
He's probably not. I mean, the man averaged 50 points.
The man averaged 50 points a game.
Yeah, it's true, but it's just I mean, like especially like guys like Shaq.
You need to go expanding your repertoire at that point.
Yeah, it's true. It's a good point. But like, why didn't Shaq ever learn it? Like, why didn't Dwight Howard?
You talk about. I don't know. I mean, you're talking about Shaq, though. Shaq's the guy who won 4 championships simply because if you gave someone like me a shotgun, I still don't think I could stop him. You know, I mean, I'd probably slow him down a little, but he'd still manage to dunk on me. And you know,
just
and the other
imagining
guys
you.
in the NBA, it was basically the same thing. You know, Shaq was such a physical marvel, and so was Wilt, that they almost didn't have to learn any nuance. You know, it was just like I'm bigger than you, and I'm better than you, and I'm going to score 30, and you're not going to stop me.
But imagine
Or
if
in
Shaq
most
had
cases-
if Shaq had Kareem's kind of like work ethic and practice. You know, like Kareem's famous for like he did ballet and he would practice, you know, hook shots for hours, and he did, you know, his conditioning was always tip top. He's famous for playing so many games and being kind of ahead of the curve in terms of like taking care of his body and diet. And I'm not saying I know Shaq had like the most fun out of almost any NBA player ever, and that's worth a lot by itself. I'm just saying hypothetically, you know, if Shaq had like devoted to making his body like a temple of basketball, I mean, I think he could have rivaled. I'm not saying he wouldn't have averaged Wilt like numbers, okay? But I do think you would definitely see he would have played longer, and he would have put up bigger numbers than he did. I truly believe that.
Are you saying that Shaq taking the first 65 games of every season to play himself into shape wasn't the ideal workout regimen?
I mean, he's so on a bat. He just doesn't care. He'll come out and say it. He's like, I didn't really try hard in practice. You know, all these different things, and you know that's probably what drove. I mean, that is what drove he and Kobe apart, because Kobe's like the exact opposite. But I don't know. It's something for another time, another conversation. But any other nuggets, Wilt nuggets you wanted to get out? Because I know you had a lot of them.
Yeah, well, I want to look back at 1961-62 again, because it is unquestionably his most fascinating season.
Of course.
And, you know, in basketball, we always speak in terms of per game numbers, which makes sense. But I also want to look at just the raw numbers. Like, he scored 4,029 points that year.
Oh, God.
I mean, that's utterly insane. He had seven 2,000-point seasons. And all of them are more than 2,500 points, I should say. And he had three 3,000-point seasons, and that's absolutely insane. And also, I think what might be one of my low-key favorite numbers from that year, and I texted you about this. He averaged in 1961 and 62. He averaged 48.5 minutes a game. So that means that not only did he play every minute of every game, he also played all the overtime minutes, and you know, never ever came out. I mean,
that's one of one of the weirdest. Yeah, I mean that's one of the weirdest gaudy stats I've seen. The 48.5. The 48.5 minutes.
It doesn't seem possible that he just never came out, but he never did. So, you know, it really speaks to his durability and also his desire to keep padding his stats. I mean, you know, hey, we're up 30. You want to come out of the game? Nope. Got to get that 50. So that year he averaged 39.5 field goal attempts and made 20 field goals per game. So he didn't average 20 points a game. He made 20 shots a game.
Hold on a second.
So
he averaged how many field goal attempts?
39.5.
What? I mean, that whole
That's a
year.
career high, by the way.
That whole year is just. Oh God. 80 games. He played 80 games. 48.5 minutes, as we talked about, minutes a game. What an extravagant.
He only shot 50%. He only shot 50% from the field. If he had shot his career average, he would have. You know, if he had shot 54%, then you know he would have made a couple more free field goals a game and would have averaged closer to 55. So, although at that point in his career, it was only his third season in the league, by the way. Although he was 25, because back then people actually stayed in college for 4 years. But his field goal percentage kept getting better and better as he got older, for the most part. Because I think that he probably started moving less far away from the basket. But I
mean, his rookie year, I'm looking at his rookie year. He didn't shoot as well as he did later in his career. He shot 46%. But, I mean,
it really hurt him in the points per game department. He only averaged 37.6.
Yeah, I was going to say, but, like, he averaged 37.6 points and 27 rebounds his rookie year with 2 assists. So let's just all right. So after his 50-point per game year, he follows that up with 44.8. All right, it's his fourth year in the league. Okay, and 24 rebounds. And then his stats start to go down a little bit. He starts to, he's still, I mean, it sounds so stupid to say. I mean, he's still averaging, like, in 64-65, he averages 38.9 points a game and 23.5 rebounds. So it's like to say they're going down.
Neither of which led the league.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, for some of these, I'm curious. Let's all right, let's do 2 things. First, let's go look at the 61-62 season. I want to see
Actually, we should point out that in 64-65 he averaged 34.7 and that did lead the league. His Warriors only total was 38.9 and then his Sixers total was 30.1 and that led to a 34.9. I'm sorry, a 34.7 for the year. So because the way Basketball Reference does that, they'll split it into which team you played for and then give you the total.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So this is kind of interesting. I just stumbled upon something here. So all right. So 61-62 is the year that he averaged 50.4 points that we just talked about. Okay. That year, the most valuable player was Bill Russell, who averaged 18.9 points, 23.6 rebounds, and 4.5 assists. The rookie of the year was Walt Bellamy, 31.6 points, 19 rebounds, and 2.7 assists.
Well, I think if you're wondering why Wilt had that chip on his shoulder regarding other big men, maybe, the year he averaged 32 points per game more than Bill Russell and didn't win the MVP.
Yeah.
Might have had something to do with it. To be fair, he didn't win the championship that year. But,
Yeah. Okay, so now, all right, we're about to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole here because I got to be careful because I don't want to get too off track. But I'm looking at Bill Russell's stats, and it's very Ben Wallace-esque, or I should say that Ben Wallace is very Bill Russell-esque. But the man never shot 50% from the field, and he averaged 13 field goal attempts for his career. But his career averages are still extremely gaudy. 15 points a game, 4 assists, and 22 rebounds, which is still like eye-popping.
I'm sure he would have averaged something like 8 blocks a game for his career as well.
I bet he would have averaged, yeah. I mean,
maybe 4.
I mean, we talked about it already, but there's kind of a funny stat about Wilt is the last 112 games of his career, they started recording blocks. And in those games, I think it was the last 112. In those games, he averaged 8.8 blocks a game. All right?
That doesn't sound possible.
Yeah, well, it's true. It's true. I mean, I'll look it up. But
no, I'm looking at it right now. There are 112 NBA games where shot block data of Wilt Chamberlain exists. His average for those 112, 8.8 blocks per game.
8.8 blocks a game. So I'm just saying, think about the years. Think about the 50-point when he was a young buck. When he was he literally a young buck? No, that's Kareem. No, he was young. He was running up and down the court. How many blocks did he average? Could he have averaged 20? Could he have averaged 15? I mean, could we be talking about a guy who averaged a triple-double with blocks in the 20s? Or like, not 20s, but like, could he have averaged like 50, 24, and 12 blocks? Like,
right, because that 8.8 came when he was in his late 30s. So, or mid to late 30s.
When he wasn't going for every single shot.
I mean, he probably would have averaged a triple-double with blocks for maybe 7 or 8 years of his career, which, pretty incredible. Because now if a guy blocks 2 shots a game, it's like, well, dude's a great defensive player, you know?
I know. That's what I'm saying. It's just like it puts everything in perspective. It's like Rudy Gobert, is like this defensive stopper. I love Rudy Gobert, first of all. I don't want to, even though he just got hurt recently and he hasn't had a great season. He's been in and out. He's been hurt. He's been injured. But, I don't know. He averages a lot of blocks. He'll throw these lines up like 8 points, 18 rebounds and 4 blocks. And everyone's like, oh, Rudy Gobert, oh, the Frenchman, with the blocks and the rebound, just everyone's just fawning over it, which I agree, it's amazing. But like, then you look at Wilt, who averaged 8.8 blocks for 112 games. That they were counting blocks at the end of his career when he was like kind of a little bit broken down, and he was, he's getting old and he's a little heavier. And you just think about when he was young, like Rudy Gobert's age, what he was doing on the defensive end. Like it's just, man, I tell you, blows my mind.
I wonder if field goal percentage against data exists. Like, what did teams shoot against Wilt Chamberlain inside of like 6 years?
That's interesting.
And somebody found Russell's. There are 135 games where blocks were recorded for Bill Russell, and he averaged 8.1. So not too shabby. Now these numbers are not ironclad. Sometimes there are conflicting reports, but the guy who did it said that when there was a conflicting report, he always took the lower number. So, it's these are not complete proven scientific numbers, but I think that the idea that Wilt probably averaged 10 blocks a game for numerous seasons is not terribly far-fetched.
Yeah,
so,
I'm going to choose to believe it wholeheartedly, even though what you said is exactly.
So life's more fun if we believe it. So.
Yeah, I'm just going to believe it. It's a fact now in my brain, and it'll always be that way. But no, you're right. I mean, the guy.
Yeah, it's like the 20,000 women,
Yeah.
You got to choose to believe it.
Exactly. Even though, yeah.
We're fun about this shit.
Oh, well, Dan, we're at the 45-minute mark. You want to keep doing? You want to keep doing some Wilt, or do you want to talk about your young 76ers? How they're talk about a big man who's fun to watch. Joel Embiid, he's a joy on and off the court, hilarious man. What do you think? Where do you want to go from here?
We can transition into the young fellas who have what are they, 14-14 now? They lost a crazy triple overtime game last night.
I missed it. I'm so mad that I missed it.
To a Thunder team that's supposed to be. I missed it as well. I came back and saw the box score, and I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
But this is a Thunder team that's supposed to be a title contender, and they're also 14-14, so they're on the long list of disappointments.
Yeah. Did you see the end? Did you see the end when Russell Westbrook told Joel Embiid to go home? Told him to go home. He was yelling at him. They were yelling at each other. And then Joel Embiid said at the end of the game, he was talking to some reporters, and he said, I am home. He should go home. And then he said he was 10 for 33 from the field. Or he said because Russell took 33 shots. And so he only hit 10 of them, I think, or something like that. He did a very low percentage. And so he threw that out there, too. It's just kind of funny that he'd already seen the box score, and he already had something in the chamber for Westbrook.
Yeah, Joel definitely studies stats in a way that would make Wilt Chamberlain proud, for sure. Although, I mean, honestly, if you look at that Sixers team, I mean, what's amazing is that you talk about players in the NBA I would consider trading Joel Embiid for. Like, Ben Simmons is on that list, and he just happens to be on the same team.
I know. I mean, Sam
Hinkie. Ben Simmons never figures out how to hit a three-pointer, which, he's 19 years old. There's no reason he can't figure that out. But good Lord.
I know.
I mean, that dude is really, really, really good, and he's 14 years younger than I am. And
he has my name.
And now I'm sad. And he has the exact same name as you.
Yeah, just keep saying that Ben Simmons is really, really good over and over again. I'll just pretend that it's me. Just keep on. No, I'm kidding.
You'll absorb some confidence that way, and maybe even some talent via osmosis. So.
Oh man, he's the other Ben Simmons. All right, I'm the original Ben Simmons. I was born before him. He's not the original. That's me. But I'm looking at Joel. And by the way, you want to talk about some gaudy stats? Man, my namesake Ben Simmons. Whew, that guy is putting up. he's going to average a triple double. I think there's probably there's bets being taken in Vegas, and I might just throw down a little cash on that because don't you think he's going to average one in his career?
Probably not this season, but at some point in his career, yeah. Especially if he figures out, well, scoring's never going to be the issue, but yeah. Part of that's going to rely on Embiid staying healthy to make all the baskets that Simmons is feeding him. But,
yeah. You're not going to get the triple double just throwing it to Robert Covington and T.J. McConnell, even though I like those two guys and they're really good. But
how dare you? How dare you?
But you also
you
have Dario Saric. That guy's like a Ben Simmons light. I mean, he's really good.
And this team could have Kristaps Porzingis. This team could have Giannis, whatever his last name is.
Yes.
But they drafted Michael Carter-Williams instead of Giannis. And to be fair, nobody knew about Giannis. But Okafor over Porzingis still bothers me. And maybe they don't get Simmons if they draft Porzingis. But it's
good point. Yeah.
It's still fun to think about a team that had all four of those players on it now.
Yeah, I mean, I think what they got. I mean, what Hinkie did obviously now is all coming to fruition, and I don't see how somebody could not think that he's a genius right now. I mean, I know that you're a Philadelphia fan. I'm sure Philadelphia fans have mixed emotions. So those are some tough years. But the truth is, weren't you guys were in the playoffs? What 2012? Is that right? With Drew Holiday?
Yeah, I think that's when we were the 8th seed and Derrick Rose blew out his knee in that series.
Yeah, and that blowout.
And then the Sixers ended up beating the Bulls.
All right.
7 games, and then took the Celtics to 7 games. And that was cool, but the best player on that team was Andre Iguodala, who's the 5th best player on the Warriors?
Yeah, exactly. And now we're in 2017, and I was talking about this with Sam, are we in the 2018 season or whatever? It's been roughly 5 years, and you guys are a 500 ball club with 2 superstars on the team, and Saric, I think, could be an all-star possibly. I'm really high on him, so it's a little bit of a exaggeration possibly, but
the Sixers have played, I believe, the toughest schedule in the league too. So they're gonna end up with a record better than 500 again with the permanent if Joel Embiid stays healthy.
Yes, indeed,
which will be a permanent caveat for the rest of his career.
God, you're telling me, man. I'm worried about the guy. I'm worried about him and Porzingis, honestly, because Porzingis just got hurt again. I'm worried about those guys. Porzingis especially looks like a scarecrow out there. And I recently did a podcast, a solo one, where I was talking about him and Devin Booker. And I originally chose Booker, but then I went back again. I originally chose Booker a year ago, but then I just went back, and now I'm all in on Porzingis, and then a day later he gets hurt. So, but I think it's a minor thing. I think he'll be back, but it just worries me the way his body is constructed. I don't know. But I'm looking at Joel Embiid.
Humans aren't meant to be that big, man.
I know. It's these guys look like they're made in the lab sometimes, honestly. I really think Yao Ming was made in the lab, though. I will think that until I die. I think he was made in the lab. I think he's...
Well, the Chinese government definitely told his parents to have a child. So
did they really?
Whether or not that actually... Yes, they... Look, I mean, this is all hearsay. I wasn't there. Spoiler alert, I was not part of the Chinese negotiations.
You weren't?
About whether or not Yao Ming should have been bred. I'm pretty sure Yao's older than I am. Yao's definitely older than I am. So, but no, his parents were both players on the Chinese national teams, and I think that the government was like, hey, why don't you guys try to have a super kid? And they did. It's just that, his ankles weren't meant to support that much human on top of them.
Yeah.
The same thing sort of happened to Shaq, and the same thing, with very rare exceptions, happens to just about every big man. He's not meant to hold that much person. So,
although I think Shaq had a wider base. He was just more stocky. He was a stocky guy who was over 7 feet tall. He's this rare.
And Shaq could have weighed less if he wanted to.
It's true. Well, this is a stats podcast, so I want to get a little bit into Embiid's stats really, really quick. So this year he's averaging 24 points. 11 rebounds flat at this point in the season, and 3.5 assists, and almost 2 blocks a game, which is excellent. It's superb. He's shooting 49% from the field, which is okay, but he's taking threes, so that's probably bringing him down a little bit. He shot a good percentage.
He's shooting 80% from the line too, which is
that's great. Yeah,
pretty good. Yeah.
And by all accounts, he loves the game, and he just loves playing basketball, and he's kind of like a gym rat, in this gigantic body. And
Yeah, I mean and he's only going to get better, health permitting, and so.
Yeah. Well, he's putting up some gaudy stats across the board, and I wish the 76ers many more wins. I want to see him in the playoffs. I want to see him go against Cleveland in the playoffs, maybe like an 8 seed. That'd be a really fun. Actually, the Celtics will probably be the number 1 seed right now, the way things are going. So if they could face off, maybe if they get in the 7 seed and they go against Cleveland, that'd be a really fun series. I mean, it'd be a fun. Them playing anybody is fun because they play a fun style of basketball, and I even like who's the backup to Embiid, the guy off the bench.
Richaun Holmes, and he's really good too.
I love that guy, man. The guy that's just an example of that team. Like there's guys on the bench who would start, for other teams. They just have so much young talent, and
I think they're definitely a playoff team this year. They're going to finish with a record slightly better than 500, and they're going to be a team that whoever draws them in the playoffs in the first round is not going to be pleased about it. So.
Yeah, no, this is true.
They're not ready to make a deep run yet, but the pieces are in place for that to eventually become routine.
Yes, indeed.
Talking about them in a vacuum is pretty exciting, and then you have to stop and think. It's like, oh wait, the Warriors still exist.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and the Warriors are basically
that's going to be a problem for years to come.
Yeah. I saw something somewhere. It was like the Warriors were on their road trip, and they were like listing all the times, like, Durant missed a game, and Curry missed a game, and Draymond's missed games, and on the road trip they were 6-0. They won all the games.
Yeah.
So it's
nice to have 4 of the 20 best players in the NBA on your team. That's a luxury.
And I was watching the Mavericks game the other night, and Mavericks were scrapping with them. The first half, I think it was like tied at the half. In the third quarter, it just becomes like too much because like their second unit could start for some certain teams. You have like Iguodala and Clay is playing with the second unit, and then you have David West, who he's probably backup big man status right now, but like there was that one year he started for Indiana, and then he was like, okay, I'm gonna go to the Warriors, or I think he went to the Spurs first, then to the Warriors. But like they have these, they're just, Sean Livingston is like their backup point guard. He could start for some teams, and he plays good defense and everything. And they just wore out the Mavericks. The Mavericks, like I think Clay hit like 3 threes in a row or something. He had been cold the whole game, and he just like rained a few threes, and like the game, it went from like being like a 6-point game to being like a 15-point game in like 3 possessions. And that's just the kind of thing they do to teams.
They did it to the Sixers this year. The Sixers had like a 17-point lead in the third quarter and ended up losing the game by 20.
Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck? You're not supposed to be able to do that.
I know. It's going to be so entertaining to watch them play the Rockets. I hope all the players are healthy. Excuse me. I hope all the players are healthy, and I hope they can play the Rockets in the playoffs. It will be fascinating, and all the stats that will be accumulated, they're going to be gaudy. They'll be gaudy.
They are.
You better believe that.
I can hear the excitement in your voice is palpable.
Yes, I'm getting so hot and bothered right now. Dan, it's been a pleasure, my friend. Let's go ahead and let's put a bow on this guy. But we'll touch on Wilt again, because Wilt, I feel like we only kind of just scratched the surface. We spent 45 minutes talking about Wilt Chamberlain, a few tangents here and there, but we just scratched the surface. There's so much to talk about. And I want to have you back on, talk about other things too, like a certain point guard by the name of John Stockton, who we both share a great affinity for. And I do want to talk about, I might do a solo podcast on Steve Nash, because I feel like I almost have to be alone for that one, because I really like Steve Nash. I'd even say I love him, and it goes beyond the stats.
I would say I really like Steve Nash is probably the understatement of the century for you.
I just feel like he's underappreciated now a little bit, because you see these. I'm on Instagram. I see these people like, they post a picture of Steve Nash and a picture of Rondo, or like a picture of No, and I admit Rondo was very good in his heyday. He's still good. But they post like Steve Nash and like another point guard who I don't think belongs in the same realm as Steve Nash. And like choose one, and then like you look in the comments and it's all the other point guard. And I'm just like, people don't really understand how good Steve Nash was. Forget the 50, 40, 90 seasons. He's the all-time leader in those. All right, so maybe don't forget him, remember him. But he won a lot of close games, and he's also an all-time great shooter. But that's something we'll get into another time. Dan, I'm rambling here. It's been a pleasure, my friend.
Likewise, I look forward to doing it again.
All right, great, man. All right, have a good one. Talk to you soon.